Hey, what's good? Yen Bailey was born and raised in North Florida. She went on to become a lawyer and served as a senior attorney with the Guardian Ad Litem Program, advocating for abused and neglected children, and later spent more than 13 years as an ethics attorney with the Florida Bar. And I know what you're thinking. Ethics? In Florida? And that's why Yen is running for Congress to represent the good people of Florida's 2nd District. This is my conversation with Yen Bailey. Before we get into it, remember to go to coconutjustice.com to get you some clothes that I think would look good on you. Let's go. Hey, everybody. I told you I wanted to fix Florida. I told you. I am hell-bent on fixing Florida. That's why I wanted to introduce you guys to someone who's running for Florida's 2nd Congressional District. Everybody, welcome Yen Bailey. Hi, Yen.
Hi. Thanks
How's
for
it
having
going?
me. It's going pretty well.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How's Florida?
It is actually a beautiful day today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice and sunny and kind of cool. So yeah, it's a nice day.
And you're in the 2nd District, so that's up by Tallahassee.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah, and that's
actually,
where the
yeah.
capital is
hmm
to like give everyone a nice clear picture of where you're living and where you want to represent. Is by Tallahassee, the capital of Florida.
Right, exactly. Yes, it is. Tallahassee is kind of in the center of this district. So it's a pretty large district. So it's 16 counties,
Wow.
and it spreads. It's kind of the center of the Florida Panhandle,
Mm-hmm.
and so it has Tallahassee, and then it kind of spreads in both directions,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just goes straight up and down, I guess, in that
Yeah.
middle section of the Panhandle.
What's life like there? So let me give you an understanding, a breakdown of how I think Florida is, and then you just fix me, okay?
All right.
South Florida is nothing but immigrants, Cubans, and stuff like that. Middle is the people that get tired of living down south and they get older, so they move in the middle. And then the north part where you live is nothing but hillbillies and rednecks.
Well, I mean, it is a very rural area,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, and I say that, actually, this district it's pretty diverse, actually, as
Mm-hmm.
far as the population goes. So Tallahassee, like you mentioned, it's kind of in the center here, and Tallahassee and all of Leon County is very blue,
Mm-hmm.
because it is right here at the capital. Um, and then we have another county, Gadsden County, which is also it's rural,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually the bluest county in all of Florida.
Hmm.
It's a predominantly black population there. And then the rest of the district is a lot of very rural counties, much more sparsely populated, and those are more red.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then a lot of coastal areas, beach,
Mm-hmm.
towns where really the livelihood is there's a lot of oystering and fishing,
Oh wow.
those types of things. And there's a lot of farming in this area. We grow a lot of
Mm-hmm.
soybeans, those types of things. So
Hmm.
and then a lot of timber. So just a lot of different communities
Yeah.
in this district.
That's interesting because I never thought of Florida as like a a hub for timber. That's cool.
Yes.
Oh, I guess the Everglades and stuff, huh?
Yeah, well, so this is, I mean, not the Everglades, but yeah, just a lot of pine forests.
Okay,
Yes, and
that makes
we
sense.
had, yes, so a lot of pine, a lot of, there used to be, one of the counties, a paper mill was their main source of industry there, and it shut down, and that really has affected that county a lot. But yeah, just a lot of timbering and
That's pretty
that
cool.
industries related to to the timber.
What was your focus before you decided to run for Congress? What was your focus? Like, what did you go to school for?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm a lawyer and I've spent most of my career just in public service. I worked
Hmm.
for the Guardian Ad Litem program for a while. That's basically a program where we advocate for the best interests of abused and neglected children that are in the
Mm.
dependency program.
Hmm.
Families that have gotten involved with the Department of Children and Families.
Hmm.
So I did that for a while, and then it was just a very it was very rewarding, but also very difficult.
Yeah, I can only
Just
imagine.
dealing with all these very difficult situations all the time, and so I did switch focuses, and I've spent most of my career doing legal ethics work. I worked for the Florida bar as an ethics lawyer, and then yeah, and then
So
about
I'm gonna assume. I live in California, so I'm gonna take my shots. I'm gonna take my shots. Ethics. It. I don't know how to say this nicely, and I don't mean to be a jerk or anything like that. When I poke fun, it's for that reason. I don't want to. I have a lot of my family, most of my family now officially lives in Florida. So when I talk like this, it's more like making fun of them.
right.
Ethics, but yet you have a representative from Florida who is a senator who got busted for the biggest
Yeah,
healthcare scheme ever.
yeah.
You guys have given us a Department of Justice. What's the whatever the top lawyer for America.
Pam Bondi. Yep.
You guys gave us Pam
Yeah.
Bondi.
Yes.
You guys gave us, well, now he relocated. He relocated, but the president of the United States, he was a Florida man when he stole all these records.
Yes.
You guys have given a, like, what is it about Florida ethics?
Yeah. So many things, right? Yeah. So many things. Like Florida, we lead the way on. So we've given the country so many things. We've birthplace of Moms for Liberty, and
Yeah.
and a lot of the MAGA movement. It just yes, yes. So a lot of these things started here. I'm not sure exactly like why that is. I mean, I think
Yeah.
yeah, Florida has just over the years, I
I
feel
think,
like, I say to some people, it kind of has become what California is for liberals, it's like a mecca for
hmm,
people who, or it's just more and more,
yeah,
we've been having a lot, and I think it has a lot to do with our tax system,
yeah.
things that I guess are just attractive to certain
A
people.
certain, yeah, with a
Yeah.
certain, yeah, proclivity. The one saving grace I will say is this group of people. It's more like a a gang met up in Florida, and then they started doing all their planning and stuff. And then this was their home, but Florida was their home base, and then they went out because we know that all of these people are connected. We know that Trump and Bondi have been connected for a very long time, and Stephen whatever, not Miller, but the other one, the short hairy one that's always talking trash.
Bannon?
Yeah, Steve
Yeah.
Bannon. Yeah. So it's almost like that. Like Florida. I like to think that Florida is getting a bad rap because a group of bad people decided to set up shop there.
Right, right. And you know, I love Florida. I was born in
Me too.
Florida. I have lived in Florida my entire life, except for college. I went away for 4 years to Louisiana, and then came
How'd you
back
like
home.
Louisiana?
I loved Louisiana, in New Orleans specifically, and it was
Mm-hmm.
just, it was a wonderful place to go to school, and I love the culture in New
Mm-hmm.
Orleans. But
New
you know,
Orleans is a
Florida will
fantastic
always
place.
be home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've been to Mardi Gras and all the things. And before people get all crazy, cell phones have ruined Mardi Gras. Don't I mean the weird things that you do in Mardi Gras, cell phones have officially ruined that. You can go and
Yeah.
party and drink and do whatever. Just keep your pants on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you know, I don't think I have done like Mardi Gras really since since cell phones.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I do. I bet it is very different now. I'm sure people
yeah,
are much more careful.
yeah. Especially if you're trying to run for office, you can't be out there doing those things.
Right. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
parts of Florida did you live in, or what have you lived in?
Yeah, well, so really, I have lived in North Florida pretty much the whole time. So, um, I was born in Fort Walton Beach, which is
Hmm.
also in the Panhandle, but a little further west. It's not actually in the second district. It's right across the edge, actually.
Yeah.
Really, just like 10 miles from the edge of the boundary of District 2.
Hmm.
And yeah, I grew up in Destin, which is the town right next door. It's a little beach town,
Cute.
and a lot of tourists now. It's grown a lot since I grew up there,
Yeah.
and yeah, so not too far away from here.
Yeah.
And then I've lived in Tallahassee. You know, I came here for law school, and then I
Okay.
just stayed.
Yeah. What's it like living in Tallahassee? What what's the difference between living in Tallahassee and living everywhere else in Florida?
Yeah, so Tallahassee is you know, it's a mid-sized town. You know, a lot
Hmm.
of people, I think, they imagine the capital of Florida, and especially people who like have not spent a lot of time in Florida. And I've heard stories from so many people
Yeah.
who decided to come to school here, or who, you know, took jobs here without visiting first. And they just imagine, oh, well, it's the capital of Florida, so it must be some big, huge city. They imagine like Atlanta, or you know, something like that. And Tallahassee is not.
Yeah.
It is much smaller, but you know, we've got a really great culture here. You know, it's just, but it's, I mean, a lot of, you know, it's a nice place to live. You
Yeah.
know, there are a lot of beautiful oak trees, and you know, these canopy roads,
Yeah.
um, and you know, you can get, you know, it does feel more suburban, I think, to a lot of people who are used to like a real
Yeah.
city. You know, it's not, I don't know that you would really consider it like a city. It's a very
Right.
small city.
Yeah. Nothing like Miami.
No, it is not like Miami or
Yeah.
Orlando or Tampa or Jacksonville. It is much, much smaller.
Wow.
But the pace of life is nice here. You
Yeah.
know, it is, I feel like it has been a good place to raise our family. And there are two large universities here. Oh, actually, there are three large universities here. So we have
Yeah.
Florida State and FAMU. And then we have Tallahassee State College, which used to be a community college. Now it's a state college. But it actually is, it's very large. There's a huge population that attend school there as well. So there are a lot of students here.
One thing I appreciate about people from Florida is they're very passionate about college sports, which
Yes,
is ironic coming from a place that bans books.
right. Yes, it is. Yeah, FSU football here is a huge, huge thing. Also, FAMU football. It is. Yes, football is definitely just a part of our culture
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it just football?
Oh
Well,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's yeah. It really is just football. I mean, we have some great some other teams, other sports here that are excellent. We have a women's soccer team that has won the national championship several times, a women's softball team that also has won. But
Hmm.
yeah, they do not get nearly as much
Attention.
attention as any, none of the other sports really get as much
Yeah.
attention as the football. I think it's just a Southern thing, really.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because football is huge in Texas. Football is huge in Alabama. Football is huge in Georgia, Florida. Yeah, I can see that. The thing is, having school pride when it comes to sports is fantastic, but we need to figure out how we can have school pride with smart people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Yes. And yeah, while yes, I mean, I feel like more and more, there seems to be almost a disdain for academics.
And this is bigger than Florida. This is almost like young
Yes.
people culture right now.
Right. Yes, it is. It is. I think there is this messaging out there coming from this administration and coming from a lot of the people, from a certain party that sometimes it's that not only is education not necessary, that it's only for elites,
Hmm.
and that it is yeah, and it is just it's something that is kind of baffling to me because I always grew up with that being such a focus.
Hmm.
My parents always encouraged education as a way of making a better life for yourself.
Hmm.
That was always one thing that was available, and it was like a sure path,
Hmm.
to trying to reach something better. And not to say that our higher education system, there are so many flaws. It is becoming so expensive. I have a son who is a senior in high school actually, and
Hmm.
he is applying to colleges right now, trying to figure out what he wants to do
Nice.
next.
Nice.
And yeah, it is just so outrageously expensive. Fortunately here in Florida, we do have certain things in place. We have a Bright Futures scholarship program
Hmm.
where if you make certain grades and you meet certain requirements, you can pretty much get almost all of your tuition covered and more.
Hmm.
But that's that's not available in a lot of states, from what I
Yeah.
understand. And it makes such a huge difference for us because he was looking at some schools, state schools, really
Hmm.
in other states, public universities, where he would still have to take out almost $200,000 in loans. You know,
Damn. No
and it does
Louisiana
make
for
a huge
him.
difference. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fortunately, I think we have him convinced that the better decision is to stay in Florida and
Yeah.
go to one of our in-state schools.
Here's my suggested I don't know what you coaching, I guess, or my tip for your son that he can take it or leave it. Look, you want to be far enough away from your parents where it they work. It has to be a chore for them to come see you, but you don't want to be so far that they can't come see you and bring you groceries and help. There. That's my tip.
Yeah, yeah. I am 100% with you there. I wish so he actually has already gotten his acceptance to FSU.
Nice.
He does not want to go there because he wants to move away. He, I think, is hoping to go to the University of Florida, which is not too far away. That's 3 hours away. Like you said, hey, it's far enough away that we can't just
Pop
drive up every
over.
single day
Yeah.
and bother him, but close enough that if he needs to come home and do laundry or buy some more groceries or just that he can come home and
Yeah.
we can stop in when we need to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good move because, yeah, especially for young men, they need to be away from the house. I was able to join the military, so I was able to. It was it was life changing to the nth degree, but being able to transition into having the space to transition into being my own person, my own adult was so important. So don't be afraid to get out of the house, but don't be afraid to stay somewhat close.
That's right.
Staying on the education thing, explain to me how and why folks out there think that banning books is a good idea.
Ugh. Yeah, I mean, I banning books, I think, is certainly something that I'm very opposed to.
Yeah.
I believe in allowing people to, especially, okay, so I can see maybe at certain ages,
Mm-hmm.
maybe having like, making sure that the parents are involved,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe still having access, but making sure that, like maybe having them in the library, maybe not having them like on like just the classroom bookshelves or but there are so many things that I was able to learn through reading and through
Mm-hmm.
just that I was not exposed to,
Both good and bad.
good and bad,
Yeah.
and it opened my mind up to so many different things
Mm-hmm.
that that I think that's just a part of growing up, is
Yeah.
just taking in those new ideas. And we really are just hampering our children when we limit, and not just limit, I mean, just totally cutting off their access
Mm-hmm.
to these books. And I mean, especially, I grew up in we grew up very poor. My parents were refugees. And the
Me too.
library
That's one of the
really,
things I wanted to talk to you about. When I told you we have a lot in common, we have a lot in common.
as I can't wait to talk about. Yes, I mean, just, so you understand, what it's like to have
Yeah.
limited resources. And the library really was just a lifeline for me
Yeah.
growing up,
Yeah.
yeah, and there were so many things that my parents didn't know about, not coming from this country, that they would have had no idea how to teach me about that I was able to learn because of the library. And
Yeah.
I just can't imagine, books that, and some of the books like it just baffle me. Like, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret was one of the books that I loved as a kid. And that's one that, I see on some of these banned book lists,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have learned about some of these things if it was not for this book.
Right. 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 And then, like one of the books that I grew up with, mandatory reading was the Bible. And there are things in the Bible that I don't want my
Yeah,
kids to know about. And there's things, you have to be careful blindly
absolutely.
banning books. And I'm not saying that all the books, like what you were getting to, not all the books are going to be good or bad, but at least it's up for debate. Those ideas are up for debate. And that's what democracy is supposed to be: a bunch of smart people figuring out rules to make life better. And it doesn't have to do with taking things away all the time.
Right, right. And, I guess the other part of it is a lot of times it seems like they are trying to ban books based on certain ideology, religious or political
And who it's going to
ideology,
trigger.
and who it's going to trigger. Right. And it's just who gets to make those decisions.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
And
I
this is
feel
coming
like,
from the group. This is coming from the group that does not see the comments being made by the president on January 6th, the same group that's banning books and trying to limit your education and trying to limit your speech and trying to do, they don't see a problem with what the president said on January 6th.
right.
The
Yeah.
irony.
That is something that I would certainly advocate for, is trying to change some of those policies. I mean, it's actually something that I do now. I mean, I do a lot of just local and statewide advocacy as well, even though that's not part of this campaign. I mean, it's not part of my, I guess, job as a federal candidate.
Yeah.
Those are just issues that I feel strongly about, and I get involved at all different levels of politics,
Yeah.
just on a personal level.
Yeah. And that's cool. I think that connection to the community is what some of these more well-funded candidates. I've heard so many. I've heard so many nightmare stories about candidates who are running for an office like this, but they live in some other place, or they're just not connected to the community at all, and they're not tapped
Hmm.
into the community. So when I hear someone like you who's in grassroots efforts and you're helping locally and especially helping families and stuff like that, it's so refreshing to hear someone say, we're going to help the people because that's my job, rather than I'm really going to try really hard to get the Dow up.
Right. To me, I'm not doing this because it was my lifelong dream to be in Congress
Yeah.
or any political office. Really, I never thought I would ever do anything in politics. These are just issues that I believe in, that I feel strongly about, and I just wanted to make a difference. And so yeah, sometimes I do show up at things. Recently I was up at the state capitol, and I was helping to advocate, on a state statute that was being passed. And I ran into this lobbyist that I had met, like through campaigning for, for my campaign.
Yeah.
And he was like, "What are you doing here? He's like, why are you in the state capitol campaigning?" And I'm like, I'm not. I was like, I'm just here as a citizen,
Yeah.
just, and
Want to get my
I
voice
I
heard.
do find it kind of interesting when I don't see other candidates, I guess, involved in state or local issues.
Hmm.
I don't know, it just kind of surprises me because then I'm like, well, do you really believe in these issues?
Right.
Are these things really important to you?
Or are you looking to take
Are you,
take advantage of the insider trading that's happening? What are you here for?
right? Right.
Yeah. What are some of the issues that are happening in Florida too? What are some of the things that you see as a problem, and how do you think that you'll be able to influence change?
Yeah, I mean, as far as just state issues in particular, the homeowners insurance, or not, well,
Yeah.
homeowners insurance is a huge issue here.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, it is very specific to Florida, but, it is now becoming an issue, all across the country as well,
Yeah.
but especially here in Florida, because of, we are, we're prone to natural disasters that destroy a lot of property. Uh, and so that is definitely an issue that Florida has been struggling with for a long time. It's something that a lot of people do view as more of a state issue, although I do hope that I can help alleviate some of the issues with that on a federal level as well.
Yeah.
That will take buy-in from a lot of other people.
And how would that work? Is
But
that
that's
just would something like that be, let's walk down that path, right?
yeah.
So if I wanted to move to Florida and I wanted to buy a house, the house itself, the prices are skyrocketing. And then the property insurance is going to be sky high because of hurricanes and stuff. Would it, being able to alleviate that bump in the road, is it just as simple as going to Washington and asking for money, and then that goes to subsidize the insurance?
I mean, I don't know that it's quite just asking for money. I mean, one of the things that my campaign has been advocating for is setting up like a reinsurance program, like a risk pool that would basically make it less risky for some of these insurance companies. So that, because one of the issues now is that a lot of insurance companies just don't even want to go into Florida. They don't
Yeah.
want to serve this market
Yeah.
anymore because there is such a large risk for
Yeah.
them. So that's something that could alleviate some of those problems,
Yeah.
is to just set up that kind of insurance for them, basically.
Okay.
And, but I mean, really, I think those are really things that will help more in the short term. I mean, really, what needs to happen is that we need to start building better infrastructure. We need to make sure that the new structures that are being built, new homes that are built up to a certain code where there is where they are less prone to being damaged from these storms. So that we don't have these big, we don't have all this damage to begin with, that create the big claims. And also just doing things about climate change
Thank you. Thank you.
that cause all the storms to begin with. Those are all things that will really fix the problem in the long term.
That's one of the more frustrating things. I've been on scientific vessels and all that stuff. I puked all over the side of their boat and everything. It was horrendous. But I've been with scientists who have been in the ocean, who have been studying and looking and doing all the things. And it's ridiculous to have so many educated people learning about the environment and letting us know that, we're adding acid to the ocean. We're running out of fresh, clean water. And then we decide to get these data buildings and stuff that now we're learning that we're using up even more of the fresh water that we've been struggling with.
Right.
And then when you go to, whether it be Congress or you go back to your constituents in Florida and you're like, look, climate change is real. We apologize. We called it global warming. We're sorry. The climate is changing and we understand that it's going to change, but we need to understand what we're doing to escalate it. And if we address climate change, maybe, just maybe, your property insurance will go down. And then people say, no, it's fake, la, la, la. Like, how do we break through?
I do think that when we are talking to certain groups, I do try to point out more of those things that, if that will appeal to people on a more practical level, if they don't really care about saving the earth or the environment, but they do care about making sure their house doesn't flood, that their house will still be standing when a hurricane passes, or just making sure the hurricanes don't develop and are not as strong. Talking more about their pocketbook maybe, because those are things that they do understand.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's frustrating because we're talking to people in a state that they ban books, they enjoy scholastic sports. They might not like the educational part of scholastics. I don't know. But there's a lot happening to the planet that we're doing to it. And people are seeing it. People in LA caught fire. I bet you they believe in climate change now. And I don't know how many, just because it's water instead of fire, it's still doing damage to you and it's still affecting your life in a negative way. So, and I can only imagine having a report and then Florida's like, nah, ban that report.
Right. And climate change is just that is certainly a huge part of it. There are also other just environmental considerations that people don't think about. Like what as far as development, just the way that we develop also really contributes a lot to how these properties are affected when storms do come through. When we are building there are these natural coastal barriers that shield a lot of the shoreline from storms that are getting destroyed from the way that we develop our coastal properties. In a lot of these areas, we're getting so much more flooding now because of the way that we build things out, where there is so much concrete that the water has no place to go. And so even with, you don't even need a full hurricane, now just with certain heavy rainstorms,
Yeah.
we have areas that are flooding. And, people say, oh, you're just anti-development, you don't care about, it's like, well, you have to think about these. It's not just trying to protect the earth and our natural resources. It's also, hey, if you want to protect your investment, you also need to think about these things.
Yeah, because the climate is going to change. We get that. But we need to, like to your point, we need to build accordingly. We can't, and I went to Florida International University for a couple quarters, and I learned a lot about the, what's it called? The study of rocks. I took a class and I learned all about the water table and building in Florida. You can't just build, you can't build a house with a basement necessarily because of the water table kind of stuff. Whereas I'm from
Yes.
Chicago, every house has a basement, so you can't have the same approach. You just can't.
Right.
So understanding that some of these places do flood a little more easily, and now we have to come up with considerations for building more affordable housing and just more housing in general. You're not going to be able to do that in the Everglades without actually doing the science and the studying behind building things in the Everglades.
Right. Right. Yes. I mean, these are things that, we have to take into consideration where we're building,
Right.
and yeah, and it's not, there are real practical considerations as well. And it's not, we're not just out there being tree huggers and just, that's all just,
Yeah,
um, those things are
some of
important
us also
too.
like money. We
Yes.
like to do cool
Yes,
things.
yeah, there are real practical reasons to consider these things as well.
Yeah. Yeah. When I go to Florida, there's certain things I like to do when I go to Florida. Beaches, eating, and going, you know, uh, jumping on one of those four wheelers and going through mud, shit like that. I love Florida, and there are certain things I like to do when I go to Florida. If you guys ruin it, I'm gonna be upset.
Me too.
What was it about Florida that made your parents are from?
Vietnam.
What was it about Florida that made them want to move from Vietnam to Florida? Humidity
Well, so
might be
actually,
the only reason.
yeah, no, I mean it really wasn't a choice actually.
No.
I don't know they actually chose Florida. They might have. So my parents, were refugees,
Yeah.
and they left Vietnam right at the end of the Vietnam War. Um, During the fall of Saigon,
Yeah.
actually, my dad actually just he was a pilot in the South Vietnamese Air Force,
Yeah.
and during the fall of Saigon, he actually just took his plane and got a few dozen other Vietnamese soldiers and civilians that they were able to pack on their plane as well, and they just took off, and yeah,
That
yeah, it
is
was.
so cool. Your dad is a badass.
Yeah, I mean, it really is just nutty. I mean, the whole story, it's like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, and he took off, and I think they got to Thailand first and then to Guam. And I think in Guam, he did say that they were given like somewhat of a choice, of where to go in the
Yeah.
U.S. I don't know that
That'd be
he
a really
actually
cool
knew.
movie.
Like,
Have your dad call me, please, because this would be a cool movie.
right? I mean, oh my gosh! And well, my mom escaped on a fishing boat.
Oh, Jesus,
And
even
there,
worse.
yeah, yeah, and there, there was actually one of the other boats in the water close by was had a bomb dropped on it, and
What?
was destroyed. Yeah, so I mean, it just they did go through a lot
Yeah.
to get here,
Were they
and
together
they
in
just
Vietnam or did they
happened.
meet here?
They actually met here at the refugee camp. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool.
So, I do say sometimes, like, the I wouldn't have been here had it not been for the Vietnam War,
I
you
wouldn't be
know,
here if it wasn't for Fidel Castro.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, so, it's like these were terrible things, I guess, that happened in our countries, but it there's something good, I guess.
Yeah.
I would Good for me, anyways,
Yeah.
and you,
No, I mean, and it's not
as
even
existing.
you can't even I've been trying to figure out how to make it all make sense in my head, right? Because especially like during Thanksgivings and family get-togethers and stuff, I get to listen to stories, whether it's mom's side or dad's side. Mom's side gives me the story from the Dominican Republic point of view, and dad gives it to me from the Cuban point of view.
Wow.
And listening to all of the dramatic and super exciting things that they went through just to get here. I mean,
Wow.
it wasn't as cool as like taking a plane with a bunch of family members. That is so cool. But you have to look at it as that's something that they had to do. It's a cool story. I'm glad they made it through. You
Yeah.
know, good, bad, and
Yeah.
different. I don't know. I'm glad I didn't have to do that.
Right. Right.
That's tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
How's a
It is.
Thanksgiving? Like, does your mom look at your dad and say, "Oh, pff, I had a fishing boat. You had a whole plane."
Yeah. I mean, so my mom has passed away a few years ago,
Oh, I'm
but
sorry to
she,
hear.
it's interesting. Like growing up, my parents didn't really talk about it that much.
Yeah.
Um, they the stories that they would tell about Vietnam were really more about, I guess, just the happier times,
Mm-hmm.
like the fun things that they can remember
Mm-hmm.
from their childhoods, things like that. I really only got snippets of war
Mm.
stories,
Mm-hmm.
even though obviously there was a lot of that,
Yeah.
they just didn't. And really, a lot of those stories I've gotten from my other relatives
Mm.
who've told me about what my parents went through.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's just, I guess it's kind of, maybe it's the trauma, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, but yeah, I didn't really get a ton of that from them specifically.
Yeah. It took me a long time to get any kind of information. I don't know what it is about that generation. They like to keep secrets and they like to keep everything in a vault. You're like, will you just tell me, please? Now that we're
Right.
older, now the information is slowly but surely like leaking out, so we're getting more of the stories.
Wow.
Yeah, this last Thanksgiving was my dad's mom's 100th birthday.
Oh,
And so
wow.
we got to hang out all together, and it was the first time in my whole life that I was around this entire group, and I was able to listen to my dad has an older brother that was in the Cuban military, and he was explaining how he learned where the American base was and Like he told the story about he knew that that one star right there, if you just follow that star and drop down, that's where the American base is.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
Wow.
it's crazy to hear. But it took me 50 some odd years to get to the truth.
Right. Yeah, I I think a lot of the story. Yeah, I was at a family, like a family wedding, I think recently,
Hmm.
and people were just talking then, and I heard a lot of those stories then too. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it just, yeah, it seems like it doesn't really, like it wasn't like they talked about it every day, you
Right.
know?
Right. If you get enough beer and rum going in my family,
Right.
the stories start flowing.
Right.
Let me go get you another pina colada. I want to hear the rest of this story. Do you think hearing those stories has affected your decision making process as far as being a congressperson?
I mean, I think it definitely gives me a real appreciation for, how, like what they've been through
Mm-hmm.
and what a lot of immigrants go through to get here. Um,
Yeah.
and how, I guess, how America really is a place that people from so many other, the rest of the world really does, it's a place that, my parents, they said in Vietnam, the way people talked about America, it was like a place out of a fairy tale,
Right.
you know?
Right.
They talked about it, like, oh, everyone in America drives a fancy car and lives in a mansion. And yeah, it's like this dream world that, people just, everyone wants to come to America. And it really does give you an appreciation for what we have here.
Right.
That America definitely has a lot of issues, certainly.
Yeah.
But it's still worth, I feel like it makes it that much more, it's worth fighting for,
Right.
And I want to make that true for people, I want to make the American dream a reality. And I don't think it is for a lot of people these days.
Yeah, especially immigrants. You know,
Yeah.
I'd have to constantly remind people. My people are fresh off the boat. Like I'm the first generation on my dad's side. I'm the first generation American on my dad's side. Second on my mom's side.
Wow.
So you can't when when we see these knuckleheads on TV talking the way that they do, I'm like, and what's funny is most of the people talking smack on TV these days haven't even served the country. Not even the way that you serve the country, and not even the way that I serve the country. You serving the country, being a lawyer and helping families and doing all that stuff, and me actually defending your right to do and say whatever the hell it is that you want to do and say. These
Yeah.
folks haven't even tapped into, haven't even invested into the country the same way we have.
Right.
But then they want to say that they have the keys to the bus.
Yes.
Isn't that frustrating?
It's so frustrating. It is so frustrating. And the way that immigrants are getting such a bad
Abuse.
rap these
They're getting
days.
such
Yeah,
abuse.
abuse. Abuse. I mean, it is just horrific. And I my parents are some of the most patriotic people
Hmm.
you would ever meet.
Hmm.
My dad, when so they're both, well, my mom has passed away now, but they were both, were naturalized and became American citizens, and they voted in every election and were so proud. My dad actually collected all of his I voted stickers,
Oh,
and he had
sweet.
this little display in the house. Yeah, he, yeah, like they just love America so much, and that really, that has influenced me a lot too in wanting to run for Congress. Just they truly believe in America and the American dream,
Right.
and what this country stands for. And I feel like a lot of people have forgotten,
Yeah.
yeah, what America's all about or what it should be about.
I know growing up, there was, and still, in my older days, there's still some hurdles and stuff like that. What was it like being a young Vietnamese person of Vietnamese descent? Because you're American, you were born here. What was it like being a young descendant of someone from Vietnam?
Yeah, well, I think especially growing up in Destin, so there are not a lot of Vietnamese people there, not a lot of Asians there. I mean, really not. Growing up, I mean, it was pretty just predominantly white
Hmm.
population there, and so there were not a lot of people who looked like me or spoke, had my same culture, and so it was isolating
Hmm.
at times. It definitely gave me, like, I guess, a different perspective,
Hmm.
and it really taught me to, I can empathize, I think, with a lot of groups that are, minority populations,
Hmm.
disadvantaged, and yeah, just a lot of, it was not always easy,
Yeah.
I guess, growing up,
Do you feel,
and very poor as well,
yeah. Do you feel that the way you were brought up and have gone through all the challenges that you have you developed thick skin to be able to, because I can only imagine, like once you take office, I can only imagine how mean people can get or be or whatever. And this is anybody in office. Like people get vicious. Do you think, are you going through your childhood and all of those challenges? Do you think, are you ready to see yourself up on, I don't know, Fox News and people talking about how you don't look American?
Oh yeah. I mean, yes, this is something that I have grown up with my entire life. You know, insults just kind of just roll off of me. I don't really,
Yeah.
it does not bother me at all.
Yeah.
It's, I don't, yeah, those types of things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's cool.
it
I like to hear that.
doesn't bother me at all.
Cuz
Yes.
because the other side of this argument, it seems like they just don't care. They're trying to change reality, and they're trying to change the narrative of reality. We can see it clearly, but they don't care. And that's why you get the Boberts and the MGKs or whatever the hell her name is. Uh, M- MTG. Yeah,
Yeah.
MTG and all those guys. And how they're just, how immature. When I see them doing their questioning and stuff like that, and they're having the banter between each other, to me, it's immature.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you thinking you're bringing a little maturity to the position?
Yes. Yes. I mean, I deal with people who are immature all the time, or I have, you know, I mean, I don't need to trade those types of verbal. We don't need to play those kinds of verbal games,
Yeah.
but I also
But can you wait?
the
Can you kick it up a notch when it's time?
I can,
Yeah.
you know, um, yeah. So I don't need,
I can't wait to see like Lauren Boebert say something and then you start taking off your ears like, oh hell no, it's about to go down now.
right? Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna let myself get pushed around either.
Good.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
because I think the other side
you
needs to
know,
understand that even though we care and we want to make the place a better place, if it's time to knuckle up, it's time to knuckle up.
absolutely.
Yeah. I think they have
Yeah,
a
I
mission.
feel like there's a time to I always I hear like different things from voters as I'm out. Some
Mm,
people are like, we need more civility, we need to get along more, we need to be able to talk to everyone. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. I agree with that. I would love to see Congress get to a point where we can all work together. We can, where we can have like bipartisan support for things and get to a point where all of the bills that are coming out are things that have been negotiated and all of those things. Where government should work the way it should.
yeah.
I would love to get to that point.
Yeah.
And I was trained as a mediator, and I love that. I love trying to get people to a point where everyone comes away happy
Hmm.
from a negotiation. That's ideal, right?
Hmm.
But you also need to know who you're working with,
Hmm.
and if you have parties who are not willing to negotiate at all, then you need to know when it's time to walk away and try a different tactic,
Sure.
because there are certain times when no amount of negotiating is going to be effective. And so then you need to try something else, different tactics.
Right.
And I think a lot of that is missing right now in Congress.
Hmm.
I think people are trying to negotiate things the traditional way, trying to work within a system that is not, where, yeah, we can't use our regular tactics when the rules are not, they're not in play. Like,
Hmm. Or even if
they're
they're in
playing, the
place,
other
people are
side's
ignoring them.
playing, and people are ignoring them.
Yeah.
The other side is playing a completely different game. And yeah, it can't just be business as usual. You know,
Right.
these are extraordinary times. And I think, and so we get so many people who are just like, well, there's nothing we can do because we don't have the votes. They have all the power. And it's like, well, yeah, in this game that they are
Right.
playing, you know,
Right.
why don't you try some new things?
Right.
Why don't you flood them with legislation so that, if they're not going to listen to anything that you say, then make their work less effective.
Hmm.
File bills anyways, even if you're not going to get all the votes. That way you get them on the record.
Yeah.
Just use tools that you have available
Hmm.
to you, whatever you have.
Holding up signs isn't gonna like tonight is the State of the Union. Holding up
Right.
signs isn't enough. Like I appreciate the effort, but we need, you know what I mean?
Right, right. More than just optics.
Right. Kente Cloth
Right.
was, no, that's dumb. We need you to put bills through. Is your incumbent a Republican?
Yes. So my incumbent is a Republican. Now he actually has he's announced that he's not going to run again. He's one of those.
Is he an older guy?
So what's
Is
that?
he an older guy?
He is. Well, I mean, I think he is. I think he's like 73.
Okay.
But he. So I mean, there actually have been rumors lately that he might not only just retire, that he might even resign early because of health issues.
Mm.
His office just yesterday just announced again that those rumors are not true.
Mm.
So who knows? So for now, he is just, he's just going to not run again.
Okay.
So we already know that. But yeah, it might be just possibly because of health reasons, but I don't know. I don't know his real, well, he said his stated reasons for not running again was to spend more time with his family.
Yeah. If I was 73 running and I was in office and the things that were happening, I would look to retire early too.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just that's just me.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of this administration to begin with, so I can only imagine like if you're trying to be a legitimate business person and all of this stuff is happening in the back room, like you have to be looking at everybody else saying, I don't know. I don't know. And
Right.
not for anything,
Yeah.
but if this dude is trying to make all the decisions, it makes your job useless. You just
Right.
you just got rendered useless.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. For this entire administration, Congress has been useless.
Hmm.
Really. I mean, on both sides. I mean, there is nothing that has come out of Congress that really is their decision.
Yeah.
It's all coming from the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. I wanted to ask how different is your running for office when you first started and everything that you've learned along the way, and if there are any very well funded people that you are running against. So basically, like the Citizens United and all that stuff.
oh yeah, yeah. So, I mean, as far as very well funded, certainly on the other side, you know, the there are some very well funded Republicans
Hmm.
who are running. Ever since Neil Dunn said he was not going to run again, I think there are now 6 people who have jumped in the race. And
From both sides, or all three sides actually.
no, no, from yeah, just on the
Just
Republican
Republic.
side.
6 people are.
There's 6 Republicans who have filed. Yes.
I can only imagine that they are well funded.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, it is. Now Neil Dunn, he never really tried very hard to fundraise at all. I think because he just
If you got 3 rich friends, why you need 6 broke ones?
right, right. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think he at the time that he stepped out, I think he had raised $800,000, which is a lot of money, but like by my standards.
Yeah.
But I think for from Republican standards, I don't know that
No,
was a
that's
ton.
yeah, no. I've talked
Yeah,
to enough people to know that 800,000 is a nice drop in the bucket,
yeah.
but there's
But
people
yeah,
that are
yeah,
rolling out with way more than that.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think for by Republican incumbent standards, you know, but I don't know that he really was trying very hard. I'm sure if he needed the extra money, it would have come.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm hearing now, all of this is all rumor and hearsay,
Sure.
that because there was talk about him wanting to resign early,
Yeah.
and there were news articles about Republican leadership talking to him and trying to make sure that he doesn't retire early. And I'm hearing that they're willing to fly him on private jets, like between
To hockey
home
games
and
in
DC,
Italy.
to make it so that he will not have to retire early, that they will make his travel as comfortable as possible,
Yeah.
whatever it takes to just keep him there.
How many Democrats are running against you? Do you know?
So there are two other Democrats in the
Okay.
primary.
Okay. How well funded are they? Because I like to point this out. There's shenanigans on both sides, right? So when there's
Yes.
people that come out and say, "Oh, we're not going to make any change. It's a two-party system, blah blah blah," but then we have the grassroots candidates and independent candidates that are trying to make something positive happen so we can break this two-party system. We're learning
Right.
that it's both sides.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yes. And I mean, I think the money in politics, I think, really is what is hurting the Democratic Party the most.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, yeah, I think Citizens United really has really ruined the Democratic Party. I think it's the reason why we don't have good messaging anymore, or that our messaging is so muddled,
Hmm.
that we are not really the party of working people anymore, which was really what was at the core
Yeah.
of the Democratic Party's messaging. And yeah, I think it is because of there are these people who are already in Congress who want to stay there and don't want to upset their big donors,
Yeah.
and who don't think they're going to be able to compete with the other side if they don't keep their big donors, which, the way politics is now, there is so much money there that, that you probably, it is very hard to do it as a grassroots candidate,
Hmm.
when the other side is pouring millions of dollars
Yeah.
into the race. Yeah. And so, but yeah, in my race, I mean, there are certainly, our between the three candidates, the fundraising has been fairly even.
Okay.
There's certainly, I think, as far as establishment, there's certainly a candidate who gets more of the local establishment
Mm.
dollars. It's not me. I think our messaging styles are very different.
Yeah.
I tend to I do tend to speak out about things like, accountability is really at the center of my campaign, overturning Citizens United, term limits, making sure that Congress people can't trade stocks in Congress,
That one's
banning
so
stock trading
big.
in Congress, which is huge. Making sure that you can't just turn around right after you leave office and become a lobbyist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Strike these kind of sweetheart deals, you know, um, making sure that the Supreme Court has an enforceable code of ethics. These are all things that I think we need to put in place. You know, I don't I don't believe we can really fix a lot of the problems that we need to fix until we actually have a government that works for people.
Yeah.
And so yeah, these are the things that we need to work on
Yeah.
first, is getting that money and power out of politics.
I've been talking to a lot of people that say, let's do away with Citizens United. What would that look like? Now that I'm speaking to a lawyer, can you in a Schoolhouse Rock, can you explain how that
Yeah,
process would happen?
sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, so to truly to truly overturn Citizens United, you would need to either get it overturned in the Supreme Court, like, there would have to be another decision, or there would have to be a change at the constitutional level, which would be difficult. But there are still other things that, you know, that's where what we would have to do to truly overturn it is a constitutional amendment. Because there is a Supreme Court decision now, but there is other legislation which could be put in place that could still put limits, more guardrails in
Yeah.
place on this unlimited money in politics.
And again, this is one of the things I keep saying the word frustrating, but it might be because I get to talk to a lot of you guys and I'm trying to get normal people to pay attention to, they say, "Oh, all the politicians are crooked." Well, yeah, but if you took money out of politics, but then they don't want to vote for anyone that's going to get money out of politics. You know?
Right.
Like it
Right.
would be way easier. It would fix everything. The commercials with
Right.
all the like all of a sudden politicians want to show that they have a family and dog and all that stuff. All that stuff.
Right.
If we took money out of politics, all of that stuff would be mitigated. They wouldn't have the money to continue to hound you.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, and I do believe that, I'm not saying that everyone in politics is bad or has bad intentions and is
No.
only there for the money
Yeah.
and power,
Yeah.
but the thing is trying to get that temptation out of the way.
Yeah.
You know, um, there are people with good intentions who, when you have the right opportunities and the right temptations or the right things presented to them, it's very easy to rationalize things, and to think that you are doing the wrong thing, but for the right reasons,
Yeah.
and hey, why don't we just take those temptations out of the way so that's not a problem for anybody, you know?
Yeah. That way we get to see everybody for who they are.
Right.
Right? You give someone a bunch of money, they're going to go get plastic surgery, they're going to go do all the things to make this. But then they're just this empty shell of a person who doesn't really care. And we have plenty of people here in this country who are willing to do this work and they don't need the $1 million bonuses that these corporations are giving them
Right.
to get in the way of progress.
Right. Yeah. And that public service, that shouldn't be what it's about. You're not going there to get rich.
Right.
That's or to get power. That's not the point.
Yeah.
It shouldn't
Think
be.
think of it like Whenever people get a jury duty summons, they get all upset. But I know people that are very excited to get jury duty summons because they like doing their civil duty. There's people out there for, you might think that they're crazy, but I like that crazy. I like the crazy where they want to do the job given the proper salary. Give you guys a proper salary so you guys don't, we're not trying to have a bunch of people in Congress that are hungry and disheveled. We don't want that. But we also don't need you.
Yeah.
I don't need you. If you're representing me and you're showing up in a private jet, that's not representing me. I'm not connected to you.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, and I'm not saying that someone who is, a billionaire can't ever understand a normal person, but I think having normal people in Congress, certainly there would be a higher likelihood that they have experienced some of the same things that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're a billionaire and you're killing it over in that arena, do it over there. But how lazy
Right.
is it? And this is, again, I get frustrated with the rich, successful people. If you were if you were all that and a bag of chips where your vice president and all the people over there at your corporation, they're kissing your ass and they're making you feel any kind of way. If you were that kind of special and you were that kind of intelligent, there wouldn't be more people struggling than than people having a job. If you were a
Right.
true American, you wouldn't be shipping off jobs to different places.
Right.
If you're that smart and successful and you're America first and all that stuff, all that silly stuff that they say, then why are you exporting jobs? Why are you letting this administration run roughshod all over us?
Right.
They're jacking up they're killing Americans and they're beating up and killing immigrants. At what point does that make you a good American?
Right. Yeah. And violating our rights while they're doing it, you know?
Constantly violating our rights. And not for anything, but corporations have more rights than Americans do. So how can you say America first?
Right. Yeah. It is just, oh my gosh, just with the things that are happening with immigration right now, there are so many just horrible, horrible things that are happening. And on top of that, just to see all of these corporations that are profiting from it, it's just
And then again, they
sickening.
refuse to pay taxes that then improve your life.
Yeah. Right? Right? Oh,
It's
goodness.
right
Yeah.
there.
So all these loopholes that, I mean, this one big beautiful bill, we we can't afford so we can't afford health care and food assistance
Yeah.
for people, but we need to give these tax breaks to these corporations and for the wealthy, like
And for what? What's the
all of
excuse?
this so that we could keep these ridiculous tax breaks.
Right. And why do they need tax breaks?
Right, right. And I mean, I guess, there's, I guess that story about, that they've been trying to sell for so long about, oh, if we help out the people at the top, it'll trickle
Right.
down to the rest of us. And it has been proven over and over that that never happens. It does not work.
It doesn't. Let me tell
The
you.
money just stays
Yeah.
at the top.
Let me tell you what rich people have told me throughout my time here on earth. You can't be rich. You cannot be rich if you give it away. So you mean to tell me that segment of the population believes in trickle down.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it
They
just,
don't even believe in trickle down. That's the trick that they're giving you
right.
to make you feel better about them keeping the money.
Right. Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
seeing trickle
I mean, it
down.
just,
We're seeing the
yeah,
effects of
it
trickle
just,
down. We're waiting. This ballroom.
yeah, it's like, okay, but where are you? Yeah. It never does. It never does trickle down. It just, it is, it just stays.
Yeah,
And it goes from the bottom up, you know?
right,
So,
right.
yeah, it is, it's very frustrating. It's like with these tariffs, these tariffs that finally, we've all been screaming for the last year that they were unconstitutional.
Yeah,
Finally, it's like, oh yeah, okay, the court agrees.
yeah.
You weren't allowed to do this all along, and so now all of these companies are going to get refunds,
And they're not going to give us the
and
money.
they're not gonna.
we,
No,
we don't get a
the
coupon. We don't get.
we're not gonna. No, that is the consumers are not going to see a penny of that. I'm sure. You know, um,
No.
you know, all this time, these companies they didn't just absorb those tariffs; they raised the prices
Right,
for consumers.
right. And I
So
bet
you
you
would
those
think,
prices,
okay, now,
not only are they going to keep the money from the tariffs, but I bet you those prices are going to stay stable.
right, right, yeah, they're not going to go back to the pre-tariff
Right.
prices. Why would they?
Why would
You
they?
know, why would they?
We're
It's
still,
just like what happened after COVID,
yeah,
A lot of things changed during COVID, you know. They did not go back to the way they were pre-COVID,
right.
A lot of these, yeah, because they figured, oh, well, hey, consumers are okay with paying these prices. Consumers are okay with not getting as much service, you know.
They're okay with getting a smaller package with less
Yeah,
things in it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they're like, well, why go back to the way the things were if people are willing to accept what we're giving them,
And it's not even
what we're
that people
charging
are,
them.
it's not even that people are willing, is that people get suckered into it.
Right.
And
Right,
they
because I'm
don't
really, I mean, what other
realize,
choices did we have?
yeah, and
Yeah.
they don't realize that they're getting suckered into it. Nope.
Right.
Price fluctuations. Okay. Well, now beef is $25. Last week it was 15 and the week before that it was 10. Well, looks like just beef is expensive now. And then they
Yeah.
go and they, save money somewhere else, which again, the quality, it's not even just the amount, but also the quality of the products that you guys are getting, it's dwindling down. And people are like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. Yeah, that works. Vote for that.
Right. And I have heard from people as I have been out campaigning. There are a lot of people who are starting to see it.
Yeah.
Who are starting to have regrets.
Yeah.
There needs to be more,
Yeah.
but yeah, there are definitely people out there who I have talked to people who voted for Trump who are now regretting their decision, who don't think he's such a great guy, such a great president anymore. I mean, I don't know that they are all ready to vote for a Democrat
Right.
or switch parties or any of that, but they may not be willing to. They might just not vote.
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Yeah. And this is my thing with Trump. I've never voted for him, but in the beginning, I was like, fine. Government hasn't really ever worked for me properly. I've always struggled.
Yeah.
We've always struggled. We've always had to figure it out for ourselves. And then I look at different populations and I'm like, they don't have to work nearly as hard as we do. Or they have access to things, or, right? Or even something as
Right.
simple as people underestimating our abilities.
Right.
So when Trump first took office, and there's videos out there where I'm saying, we're going to be fine, we're going to be fine, you know, and I was excited at the beginning when he started breaking things because I was like, good, let's fix it. Find ways, break it, and then let's fix it. Let's get the right people. But it got to be a slippery slope. He's breaking things, and then he kept breaking things, and then he kept taking things, and then he kept breaking things and taking things.
Right. Yeah.
So for MAGA, like, I was never full MAGA, never none of that stuff. Because that's just a mentality that doesn't click. But I was excited for the outsider and all that stuff. When it came to that part, I was like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. Let's see what happens. Let's turn on the lights and
Yeah.
let's watch the roaches run.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting how there is a lot of ideological overlap, I think, between a lot of the MAGA people and a lot of the very far left people. you know, like they agree on a lot of things. Really, if you really like boil down to like some of the root issues,
Right.
this whole idea that the government doesn't work for people, that there's so much corruption, that the establishment is not, it's not there for, it's
They're
only
in
there to
on the
help
joke.
itself. And, they're in on, yeah,
Yeah.
all of those things. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think it's just, yeah. And I think that Democrats also have to own a lot of why why we're here, why we're in this
Right.
situation, because yeah, I think a lot of people stopped believing that Democrats could help them. And, then, MAGA came in and promised all of these things. And they're like, well, let's see.
Right. Can't hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like exactly like Trump said, what do you have to lose? And you're
Yeah.
like, well, that side didn't do anything for me. This side, at least they're promising change. I get it. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do too. I have seen, just there are so many people out there who really are just work so hard and are just still struggling,
Right.
and they don't believe that government is gonna help them, that
And let me break the fever dream that is run America like a corporation. People that say run America like a corporation have not worked in corporations long enough. Because it's all there. The crony capitalism, all of the stealing money, hiding money, moving money, all of the, like, Hollywood alone will show you the techniques that Epstein and those guys use for you to find success. You know what I mean? Those things, all of those things. We have to get away from all of those things. Corporate America is not the answer. The government, this is the way I think I should, talking to you guys, this is the way that I think it should be, if not explained, at least worked. America, the government of the United States, should focus on making incredible Americans that qualify for all the jobs and that are very smart and all the things. And then corporate America can take over. That's
Yeah,
super simple.
right. Yeah, I am so, I'm not against capitalism
Right.
like that, for businesses to earn a profit,
Right.
and I'm not against, people making a good living,
Right.
it's just I so there are certain things, in society where you can rely on capitalism and the free market to take care of
Sure.
itself. There's certain, things where that can create a profit. I think where, there is just, but there are certain things that that the government cannot privatize.
Hmm.
There are certain things where you need the government to step in, and that is where there are certain things where where things like, okay, well, look at our prison system, and like what's happening with these detention centers.
Right.
Those things are, when you are dealing with human lives, those are not things that should ever be privatized, because those are things that you shouldn't try to make a profit off of.
Hmm.
I worked in the dependency system, like I said, with the Guardian Ad Litem program.
Hmm.
And, when I first started working there, Florida had just switched to this privatization system,
Hmm.
for the dependency system, where you had these private companies providing services for families that got into the dependency system, and it was a disaster. I think it's still a disaster. It's just where a family, say, needs these services, counseling or whatever,
Right.
right? How it is never going to be in this private company's benefit. It's not going to be in their interest to provide this family with as much counseling services
Right.
as the family needs.
Right.
You know? So you have these competing interests. And the family's always going to lose out,
Hmm.
because that company is a for-profit company, and it needs to look out for its bottom line
Right.
and its investors, And so, yeah, if they can like cut off your services early, if they can, they're always going to try to do
Right.
that.
And isn't it strange that a country that right now is so almost addicted to its own culture, but you're not teaching people how to be a part of the culture? That's what these folks do. When we talk about therapy and we talk about counseling and we talk about those things, it's to try to, it means that part of the United States culture doesn't fully make sense to you, so we kind of have to make it make sense or help it make sense to you. That's what counseling is. That's what I've, and then if it escalates, obviously the culture doesn't make sense to you, so we have to put you in jail, give you a timeout type of thing, right? But a place that is so addicted to its own culture refuses to teach the people about the culture so then they fit in. And then you get upset, and then some folks get upset when the culture doesn't make sense to you and you start to break the rules. Now they want to put you in a for-profit prison, stamping out license plates, and then they get to forget about you. And it's just not fair. It's not, it doesn't work. The way we've been doing things does not work.
Right.
Yen Bailey, we're coming close to the end of this episode, so I want to ask you one last time, and then you can finish up with letting people know how they can find you on the internet and everything. But take however long it takes to explain to people how you're going to help us right the ship and fix everything.
Yeah, well, I think, like we discussed, I think it starts at trying to build a government that works for people, you know, for for the for the people it's supposed to serve, and not for the special interests. And I think we do that by getting the money and power out of politics, so that the people who are there in office, that they're in, the only incentives that they have are to serve the people. And so, and I think until we get to that place, we're not going to be able to solve a lot of these other problems that we have.
Yeah.
As long as we have all of these other special interests, like speaking into all of these politicians' ears and trying to guide things in a certain direction. People talk about, like healthcare is one thing that I would love for us to get to a point where we have single payer, universal healthcare. I think that would be wonderful. I don't talk about that as being like one of the things on my platform because I don't believe I can promise that. Not anytime soon, because our country is not at a place where anyone is going to make that happen anytime soon. Because until we get the insurance industry has such a stranglehold, like, on everything,
Yeah.
that until we can fix all the power that they have, we're not going to be able to fix our healthcare system in that dramatic a way.
Right.
You know, I can help you. I'll fight for the ACA subsidies. I will fight to make incremental changes within our system. Like I can certainly, and hopefully we can get there once we make these other changes. Healthcare is not the only issue. It's just there are so many issues that we have people like outside of the government so deeply involved,
So deeply
in our
influencing.
decision making process.
Yeah.
That we need to get it so that we have a truly working system first.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And the healthcare debate, again, making healthcare affordable for everyone will help specifically Floridians. If you can have affordable healthcare and you have some money left over, now you can start looking at that house insurance that you can't afford, or you can fix the flooding that just happened.
Absolutely.
So it's a part of the bigger
Yeah.
puzzle, but it's
It
an
is.
important part.
It is. It's so important. I mean, healthcare is just, we truly do have a healthcare crisis right now. And there are so many things that need to be fixed within that system.
Oh, we can go. We can go to the quality
We,
of food affects your health. Your health affects you're going to the hospital. Your hospital affects how much money you have. How much money you have affects what house you have. The house I have affects the insurance you need.
yeah.
It's a holistic.
And I
It's
mean,
a holistic
it's a
approach.
whole, it is, it is. And I mean, the way we currently have our system set up, it is so tied with your employment.
Yeah.
And that really affects, what jobs people take, where people live, all of these things that, it affects so many other decisions in people's lives. And yeah, I would love to see us get to a point where, we have a completely different healthcare system.
Yeah.
But but yeah, that is one huge issue
For real.
that there are a lot of um, different parts, and it is is it is like it's so many different industries, so many different issues are affected by it. Yeah, that um, we're
Yeah.
not going to have like a dramatic change for a long time. We're
As
it's
far as that, yeah. Unless, uh, yeah, we have a lot of chipping away to do, as
yes,
as
that's
as
yes,
people that are trying to
and
be do-gooders.
yes, yes, and I am committed to chipping away at that system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. Go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you online and where they can follow up and learn more about you and your platform.
Yeah, if my website is yenbaileyforcongress.com, and you can go there and read all about me. It'll give you a link to all of the different social media platforms that I'm on. Definitely like and follow and share. That's always like I always tell people that's one of the easiest ways that you can help support the campaign
Yeah,
is just share the social media, get the word out.
yeah.
That's, one very simple thing. Um, yeah, donation link, of course, on my website.
Every bit
It's
helps.
a totally grassroots campaign. Every dollar helps.
How long have you been running your campaign?
Well, I mean, I think it's been, and like I said, I don't know if I even mentioned, I ran in 2024 for 3 months,
Yeah.
you know, so, and then I think I filed again in January of last year. So,
Cool.
yeah, it has been, it has been a long process.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully this time will be your last time because you'll get the job. We got to get way more people that that in Congress that actually look at the world in the way that you do through the human experience and making it better for humans to do human things. And that's the only way we're going to make the world, the country, a better place. And with the United States being a better place, it makes the world a better place.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's been lovely meeting you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And with that, we're out.
All right. Thank you so much. It was
Coconut chestnut.